In this lecture, I will be introducing you to the Jupyter notebook and giving you an overview, and we will also write a first line of code on Python. Like I showed you earlier, you will first have to open Anaconda Navigator. Like I said earlier, the first time that you're opening it, it might take anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds for Anaconda Navigator to open. When it gets opened, we are only concerned with the Jupyter option right now. So don't bother with the other elements here. Click on launch. Now, Anaconda Jupyter notebooks will be hosted on your browser, but you need not worry, this will still work even if you don't have internet access. As you can see, the URL here is localhost colon 888 but it might be different for you. Tree simply refers to my root folder in which all my files are there. So I'm just going to open one of my existing codes and show you how a Jupyter notebook looks. And then we will see how to create a new one. So let me just open one of these. Let me also hide the bookmarks part. So this is how a Jupyter notebook looks, everyone. It is hosted on your browser. And in this, you have these different blocks. And in every block, you can write some piece of code. Jupyter Notebook is hosted on the cloud. That means that you can also do markup on it. If you want to add some images, if you want to add some comments, some other text, you can do that as well. So I want to open a new Jupyter Notebook for you. To do this, we will click on New and then select the notebook as Python 3. So remember that the name itself, which is Jupyter, is not meant only for Python. As a matter of fact, the JU here refers to Julia, the PYT refers to Python, and the R refers to the language R. So Jupyter is actually a loose acronym which refers to Julia, Python, and R. The reason is because these three were the first target languages for Jupyter, even though now the notebook technology can support several other languages as well. All right. Now this interface that you see is nothing but a server client application, and it allows you to edit and run your notebooks in a web browser. It need not be Google Chrome, it can be any other browser as well. And do remember that you can even run this without internet access. Now there are two components here. We have a kernel and a dashboard. So a kernel is a program that runs the code, right? So the Jupyter Notebook app has a kernel for the Python code. And similarly, there are other kernels available for other languages as well. And the dashboard shows us not only the notebook documents that we have made, but it can also be used to manage the kernels that we are using. So without further ado, let's get started. We will write our first line of code. So you notice that I have a block here called in, and in this we will write print, and inside parentheses, you will make a double quote and write hello world. As most of you would be aware, writing hello world is almost the rite of passage. And whenever you learn a programming language, this is perhaps the first thing that any developer does. To run it, you can click on the run button and you notice that the result comes like this. So nothing very fancy, I've just shown you how to write a single line of code on Python. Let's also see an overview of the interface. All right. So if I click on the file option, we have different things available here. So let me just go over all of these one by one. So you have the ability of creating a new notebook, which we have already done. You can open an existing notebook. You can save a copy or save it using a different name. You can also save different checkpoints in case you want to go back 5 hours and go back to a previous version of your file. You also have the option to download it as different formats. Now, the most common one would be to either download it as a Python file, which would be the extension .py, or you can download it as a notebook, which will be IPYNB. And IPYNB is always recommended because it is a Python notebook. That means that in addition to the code, any other markup, so any other comment, text, images that you have kept, everything is downloaded along with it. If you want to close it, remember, do not just close the browser directly. You will have to click on File and then click on Close and Halt, which makes sure that the notebook kernel is closed and then the window is closed. If you click on Help, you have an option to see all the keyboard shortcuts. So I won't take you through them. Whenever you get the time, just make sure to go over these. These will help you save a lot of time. And then you also have a user interface tour. I'll quickly take you through this tour. You can see the file name here. So you can double click and change it to whatever you want. I'm going to call this my first code. The menu bar here shows you all the menus for actions on the notebook. Then we have the notebook toolbar. So if you're using any of these toolbars, you can hover your mouse and see what it does for you. In the top right corner, you have a mode indicator. Now this can either be an edit mode or a command mode. For example, right now we're in the command mode, which means that this area does not have any icon. When you see a pencil icon, this means that you're in the edit mode. When you see a border around the active cell, this means that you're currently in the active cell, which means that anything we type will come inside this particular cell. If you want to go back to the command mode, you can simply press the escape key or click outside. For example, right now I'm editing, but if I click outside, I'm exiting that particular cell. Like I said earlier, if you want to see a list of shortcuts, you can just click on the keyboard shortcuts option. You also have a kernel indicator in the top right corner. Now, this is when the kernel is idle. It turns black, which means that the kernel is busy. Now, this happens when you're running a code and the code is still being executed. If you want to cancel a computation, because sometimes the computation might take a very long time, or there might be something wrong that goes inside the code. So if you want to stop it in the middle, you can just click on the stop button. Any messages that you have will appear in this area. So that is a quick overview. I would recommend you to go over this particular tour a few times just to get the hang of everything that is there on the Jupyter notebook. So we have written our first code. In the next example, I'll show you how to start writing more complex codes, and we will understand different data types, different syntaxes that work on Python.